Next up is a gentleman who began his screen career playing a ruthless killer in Scream and is the closest thing that this film also has to a bad guy, but a very good actor. Please welcome Matthew Lillard.
Oh, you didn't get it.
I don't have a name. I have no name.
Here, you're the man.
I have no name.
Next up is a truly prolific actress who has worked across the mediums and the genres, stealing scenes and making people laugh and or cry everywhere she goes, including in this towards the tail end of the film we've just seen. Please welcome Judy Greer. Next in this lineup, a 20-year-old who is the star of the ABC Family TV show The Secret Life of the American Teenager. She made her big screen debut in this film, and for her efforts received Best Supporting Actress nominations at the Critics' Choice Awards, the Golden Globe Awards, and was named the year's Best Supporting Actress by the National Board of Review. Please welcome Shailene Woodley.
Woo! Sorry.
And lastly, a guy some of you may have heard of. He was nominated this year by the Screen Actors Guild for Best Actor. He won the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Drama, and he is now up for Best Actor at the Oscars for the third time in 5 years, Mr. George Clooney.
Hi.
I understand we may also, depending on scheduling, if it's possible, we will be joined by Robert Forster as well. So I'll give up my chair if he does make it here. But what a group! So to begin with, I think all Q&As, you guys probably the first question you're hit with is how did you wind up in your parts? And actually, in this case, often the answers are pretty boring. But in this case, there are some very interesting ones. So to begin with, I just want to ask Shailene. Well, actually, let's start with George, because George, I'm going to come to Shailene.
No, I just read for it.
But let's, just to set it up, you wanted to work with Alexander Payne. I think it was 7 years before you ended up doing it. And that was on his previous film to this one, Sideways. Why did that one not work out, and why did this one work out?
You know, I realized that Sideways wasn't going to be a very good film, and I decided not to do it. No, you know, he failed to find me charming enough for the film, and we met. It was fun. I can't remember how long ago it was, but it was like I think 2 years ago. He called me up and said, I went to Toronto and we had dinner, and he said, "You want to do the movie?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you want to read the script?" And I said, "Okay, later," you know. And then he's one of those guys, and you know, there's actors in this room. You'll understand if Alexander Payne calls you and says, "Do you want to do a movie?" The answer is yes. It's a great gift. He's only done, at that point, he'd done 4 films, and they were all really wonderful films. So I just wanted to work with him. So that's how it came up.
Shailene, I think people will get a kick out of the fact that of the hoops that you had to go through in terms of scheduling while being on a TV show just to get seen by Alexander Payne, to be considered for this. And then also what you were in the midst of doing when you found out that you got the part. So I hope you can share that for probably the 1 millionth time this season.
Yeah, to audition for Alexander when he was in LA, I wasn't able to get time off of my commitment, so I auditioned for him in New York. I flew to New York. And then a month later, he called me and we had coffee, and he said, "You're my #1 choice, but I'm going to go audition every girl on the islands of Hawaii, and if there's a woman better suited than you, then I'll let you know." And that I thought that was great. I took it as a compliment, and I didn't even need to book the role. It felt good to hear that from him, and whoever's right for the role is right for the role. And anyways, he ended up calling me and telling me I booked it, but I was living in New York when I did book the film over hiatus of Secret Life, and I was working at American Apparel, and yeah, I had to quit, and it was terrifying to go do the film.
And
Wait, you were working in American Apparel on your hiatus?
Oh, come on, you know this.
But I think it's great. The reason you were terrified, you're saying, is that you were afraid the boss would be offended that.
Oh, terrified. I had only been working there for about 2 months, and to put in my 2 weeks' notice was terrifying.
It was a good excuse. Nick, how did your mother and a bag of Cheetos both factor into your winding up in this film?
So when I first saw the sides for the audition, I was living in Austin, and we got the sides, and my sister and I decided to film them at 5 in the morning, just kind of as an off thing on our way to school because we lived so far away. And it was on her cell phone, and we kind of sent it out to LA and forgot about the tape after a while. Several months later, John Jackson, who was the casting director for the project, gave us a call, and they said, we'd really like to see Nick up in New York. And so my mom and I went up to New York, and kind of before we go into the room, we're thinking, we're looking for something really interesting to kind of make me stand out. And so I look around, and I go into this convenience store, and I grab a big old bag of Cheetos, and I just shove it in my front pocket. And then my headshots printed out all funny that morning too, and I wanted to make it look intentional, and so I crumpled those up and put them in my other pocket. And I just pulled out the whole mess when I walked into the audition room and said, "Alexander, you must be so hungry after a long day of auditions. Have these Cheetos on me, sir." And so he starts munching on Cheetos, and we read through the whole thing, and literally in the room, he called my mom in and told us that I had it.
Bring snacks with you.
Right. Matthew, you have talked openly about the fact that prior to this film, there had been a few films on your filmography that were not as artistically ambitious, shall we say?
All of them?
All of them.
I'm in every bad movie ever made. I don't think that's funny.
So how did it come to be that you were thought of for this part, or that it worked out for you?
Well,
Yeah, how'd that happen?
when you're casting George Clooney's wife's lover, you think of one person. This guy.
Right.
Scooby. I heard that. I have amazing abs, and I'm very tall. I don't know how I got this role. It's ridiculous that I had no idea there was an Academy Award season until this film. You do this every year?
No.
Yes, almost.
No, I remember I was in Batman and Robin, so fuck you.
It's the only thing that makes you human, sir.
And Return of the Killer Tomatoes. Come on,
Right.
let's go.
I had, it's a long story. It's really not worth telling yet again. But I had this I had an audition come up, and I was taking my kids to see a movie. And I had a choice. I had this choice to be a good father and take my kids to see the screening of a Scooby-Doo cartoon that I had done at Warner Brothers Ranch, or go audition for this film. And I pulled up in Santa Monica, and I knew if I left in that moment, that I could make it with my kids to the other side of town to show them this terrible animated movie that I was doing. And I actually had the gall to call my agent and said, well, let's just reschedule. And that's when my agent's assistant, not even my agent, because I couldn't get him on the phone. Just want to cry every time I tell this story. My agent's assistant, who since then has been fired, told me we can't reschedule the audition because they didn't want to see you. So we slammed you into a slot. So I know that I'm playing, I'm going into audition for Clooney's wife's lover, which is a joke. I see myself every day in the mirror, pretty much naked, and it's not that impressive. And I'm now going into an audition slot that they want to see somebody way more handsome. And I walk in, and humiliatingly enough, every good-looking guy in Hollywood is sitting in the waiting room. And, I walked in the room. And look, for me, it was an opportunity to act in front of what I think is one of the great filmmakers of our time. And as an actor, you don't get very many opportunities to do that. And to audition for me is an opportunity to work.
So wait, but importantly, did the kids make it to the movie?
They didn't make it to the movie. I locked them in the car.
Crack the window.
They're outside right now. No, but the funny story is, it was for Addie's birthday. It was, this whole thing. And I said that they could, when I got the job, I invited 20 of their best friends over, and we screened the movie at my house, which cost me as much money as I made on this movie. But it was totally awesome. And I got the job.
Very nice.
And I'm just as surprised as you are.
Judy, absolutely. Judy, at the first table read, you learned something about the film that I believe you did not know before that, and that was going to offer you an opportunity to do something that you had not done, something like 12 years earlier, when you first worked with Mr. Clooney. Can you please fill in those of us who may not remember Three Kings as well as you do?
I almost don't remember Three Kings because it's been a few years, but yeah, I was just a young thing, and I got cast in this movie where I had this sex scene with George Clooney, and we never kissed in the movie, and so then in this movie, I really don't remember it being in the script when I read it before my audition, but at the table read, I remember we were reading, and then and he kisses her was someone who read the stage directions, and I was like, and I remember Alex.
We had sex on film. We just
but
had
never,
Right.
never kissed. And people after Three Kings were like, "Woo, what's it like to kiss George Clooney?" And I'd be like, "I don't know, because I only had sex with it." So.
Oh, there's so many
Kissing's-
jokes I could make right now.
Way more personal. So then when we read that in the stage directions at the table read, I was like, what? And Alexander was like, yeah, I put that in for you. But I know that he didn't, because he's a genius, and he knew that that would be like a really intense, awesome moment in telling that story of these people, and especially for your character. But it was pretty awesome. And that's what I mostly have talked about for the last, I don't know, 3 months.
Sure.
I have one question for you, if you don't mind. Do people ever ask you what it's like to kiss Judy Greer? Because I answer that question daily.
Well, I told them that we just had sex.
That's my wife.
Take it easy, pal.
George, you were obviously for most of the film going to be working with two significantly younger actresses, Shailene and Amara Miller, who's not here.
She's not here for a good reason.
She was a handful, right. But there, I think for anyone who sees the interactions between you guys in the film, it strikes a very real chord. These are unlike a lot of movie kids. They are sort of believably smart ass, but also sensitive and real. And in the same way, I think their interactions with you. You're a dad in the movie that a lot of kids might recognize. A little aloof, a little schlumpy, not the most fashionable, but running around in your sandals. But
Like those khakis, dude?
yeah, right. But basically, a dad that is trying his best. And so I just wonder what you guys collectively did, and Shailene, please chime in as well, to create that very believable sense of family before the cameras were rolling.
Well, we did. Alexander, like a lot of directors that I've worked with, the Coen brothers and Soderbergh and Jason Reitman, directors that I've enjoyed working with, doesn't do a lot of rehearsal. It's mostly sort of you read through the scenes and then you spending time together. So we spent a couple of weeks just hanging out, all of us in general, all of us except for Matthew, because I didn't want to.
I'm an intimidating figure.
No, the kids and I all just sort of spent time together, and it was a funny thing. It all sort of took on a life. Amara had never worked on a set before. Really never done anything like that, which was really helpful on film because there's when I did ER, I played a pediatrician, so I worked with a lot of little kid actors, and they oftentimes are overworked by their parents by the time they show up, and they're sort of a little too professional. And she really was sort of this loose cannon, which was great. And it required Shailene in many ways, in some ways like in the movie, Shailene is more the parent than I am. And Shailene sort of had to corral her a lot and keep her sort of tacking in the right direction. And it was fun to be just in there and be part of it. We just spent a lot of time together, mostly, right?
And this was all just around Hawaii. You guys that's where this time took. But
yeah, I mean, she, Amara literally knew nothing about. She would. I've said it before. She'd sit down and they'd put ice cream in front of her for a scene, and she would eat the whole bowl. And I didn't say anything because I found it fun. And then she would, but it was everything. We were about to shoot a scene, and she came up behind me. Remember this? We were in Kauai, and she came up behind me, and she went, bam! And she hit me on top of my head and broke my 2 front teeth out.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, you little shit. And then I had to go get crazy glue, and I had to piece my 2 front teeth back together because they were shattered. And then I had to glue them into my own mouth because there was no dentist around. To go finish shooting the scene. So I'm like, listen to this. Yep. So it really was very much a family.
Wow.
She's still grounded. By the way.
Shailene, I would think for even a very, an actress who's been in the game for years and years, it might be somewhat intimidating to have to know that you're going to be sharing a lot of one-on-one scenes with this guy. And I guess what I would like to ask you about, though, is you've talked about what a great, how it was refreshing and to find out once you actually met him that he was very sort of down-to-earth and a great partner throughout the film, not sort of pulling rank or anything like that. And you talked specifically about sharing scenes, what it was like to do that. And I think there are a lot of scenes that people will remember with the two of you. So can you just talk a little bit about that experience of working with Mr. Clooney?
In front of you, it's a lot of pressure. I was a little bit intimidated just because you're such an incredible actor, and the day.
Wait a minute, keep going.
Shut your ears off for a second. At the table read, the first time. Thanks.
I think you're amazing. I think you're handsome. I think you dress perfectly. I think Brad Pitt's a little bitch. I think. Do I have to give this back?
The funniest thing is he won't give it back.
Where was I?
He's incredible.
God damn it.
Yeah. We're saying he's incredible.
That's the old move.
At the table read, he came up to me the first time I met him, and he gave me a big hug and said, "Welcome, sweetie." And immediately the intimidation factor went away. I don't know how you can be super intimidated after that gesture. And then on set, I've worked with some actors before where as soon as the camera isn't on them, they aren't present in the scene, and they'll either have a stone face, or they'll be reading their lines from the paper, or their eyes will be closed, or they'll be yawning. And George, regardless of whether the camera was on him or whether it was just on his back and he didn't have any dialogue, he was always present and available, which made it so much easier and comfortable for us to be present and available, or at least for me individually speaking. And
I thought you were going to say I was stone-faced and dead while I was on camera as well. Look, I have to say, the fun part about it is, people understand this, when you're on a set where you're working with a director that's really a wonderful, talented guy, and you're working on a screenplay that you like, and you're working with actors that you enjoy, almost all the work is done. All you're really trying to do is not screw up. You're trying to make sure that you're filling all the gaps that you should fill along the way. And we had a really wonderful leader in Alexander, and so there was never any. I think anybody really felt any weird intimidation by anything. you know, except that you felt an immense responsibility to do a good job with his project that he hasn't done in 7 years. You know.
Nick, there is a scene that you have with George in that at the National Board of Review Awards, one of the zillions of stops along the way to the Oscars. There was a very heartfelt moment that probably the most, I know for Alexander, he said it made the night for him, when Robert Benton, the writer-director, the great writer-director, said that the scene that you and George share where, I guess, sort of in the dark, you sort of come to understand each other, he said that it filled him with envy that somebody could write and act that scene as well as you guys and Alexander, put it all together. With a scene like that, do you know when you're doing it or right after you've done it that you've done something really special, or do you have to hear it from somebody else to really kind of look at it that way?
This is my chance to earn $20 right here.
You're out of cash, brother.
With the whole film, the entire script, just seeing it the first time, I knew that it had great potential to be something amazing, which it ended up becoming. And that scene in particular, for me more than anything, I was excited to go in and really learn a lot, especially that night, because it was such an intimate setting. It was Alexander and the DP, Faden, and then the two of us, and it really, that was mostly it in that room, and it was just very tight quarters and a very intimate setting, taking the direction from Alexander, and getting to watch you act up close was pretty cool too.
No, that was a fun scene to shoot. We shot it pretty quickly, actually. Didn't screw around, just a couple of shots on either side, and he worked really quickly. I think he just wanted it to be as spontaneous as it was. And the fun part is, because I wasn't around for the auditioning, we'd done all the stuff where he's like, yo, counselor, kind of stuff. And it was really fun to see him in that scene and see him be vulnerable and be a grown-up in that. And I was a fan of the scene, and I was a fan of being in that scene with you. So I really had a good time on it. It was fun.
Judy, you have talked for a number of years about something you've come to call Judy-sized roles. And I would like to ask you to describe what that term means, and also how, with sort of the restrictions of limited screen time, you were able to do so much, especially, of course, with that hospital scene at the end where you are asked, and passed with flying colors, run the gamut of emotions in something like a marathon. I mean, it's over very quickly, but you're like shocked that this has just happened. So can you, Judy-sized roles and then that scene specifically?
Judy-sized roles, I always think of that because they're like anywhere from like 3 to 7 on the call sheet, I'd say. Like that's a Judy-sized role. I don't usually go above 3. But it's awesome because when you're on location, you have like all this free time when you guys are on set working. Like if you have a Judy-sized role, you can like get to know the town that you're shooting in and go antiquing and have like a nice bar stool at a local bar and get to know some of the townsfolk. That's fun. But I like those parts. I mean, they're like, I feel like when you get cast in a smaller role, in a way they expect you to like make something of stuff that isn't always there. It's like, oh, you can make this awesome, or you can make this funny, or sorry, it's not on the page, but maybe you can like do something that you do that makes it good. But in this role, like it was all there. Like there was no, I mean, we've talked about how there's one ad lib in the whole movie, and I'm sure that you will like to tell that story in a minute, but everyone, we all, like, you don't mess around with a script like this. You don't need to try new things with a director like Alexander Payne, and my job on set for that hospital scene, because of Alexander, because of the words, and because of you, was really easy. It was really easy. I don't know, that it was all there, and I think that I didn't always understand what this woman was feeling, and that in a way made it easy too, because I think that there's a million things that you would feel in that moment. And George was really respectful of letting me cry or not cry or whatever, and Alexander too. And
Well, it was funny too, because when you were doing it, I mean, he didn't do a lot of takes because it's a tough scene, you know, in that world. And sort of Judy just hit the boards running. Now, right off the bat, she really had it. So I think it was like 1 or 2 takes, and he goes, well, I don't even know why we're shooting anymore. So he got it. But the funniest part was, you know, you don't know what's going to be funny or not, because she's in a scene and she's standing over a woman who's dying, who's cheated on with her husband, and she's genuinely crying and she's genuinely angry. And you don't really know that the director is going to make that a funny scene. So I was with you when it was like a test screening, I think, and she's crying like crazy, and all these emotions coming out, and the audience is roaring, and she's standing back like, like gonna cry again. I just thought, I didn't think it was funny at all. It's the beauty of working with a really good filmmaker. You know?
And just as that addendum, did you want to mention about that ad lib? The one.
George Clooney thinks he ad-libbed the only line in the
Sorry.
script.
Sorry about
And
it.
I would like to differ with that opinion.
Differ all you want.
I told him he's getting a lot of accolades. Can I just have the one line? In the movie, he said, did you ever see the inside of my bedroom? And I say once. He said, well, you could have lied about that. And I said, okay, twice. Thank you, ladies. George thinks he did that.
I'm not gonna say anything because you're just so fucking happy right now.
So happy. The highlight of my life. Want to thank the Academy. All of you people.
George, at the after you chuck Judy out of the hospital room, you are alone with your wife for one of the few, if not the only, times in the film, and it's very quiet, and we wait and see what happens, and then something very unusual, I think, for American moviegoers happens, which is that we see a A-list leading man movie star show true vulnerability on the screen, which is something you really you're gonna have to dig deep to think when last we saw something like that. And I think the question that went through my mind the first time I saw the film, and until I got to ask you this once before, was just where do you go mentally to provoke that kind of emotion?
You know, first of all, it's a really well-written script, you know, and the room sort of led that. You know, when you're saying goodbye, my love, my joy, my pain, it sort of tells you, it informs kind of exactly where you're going to be. There's a really interesting thing. That woman, the woman who plays my wife, who was a local hire, Patty Hastings, who had, you know, she was a background artist for all intents and purposes in the very beginning. She lost 20 pounds. We sort of shot her stuff in order. She lost 20 pounds. She would stay up all night and then come into work, get made up, and then take a melatonin and stay in that literally, and stay. We'd leave her for lunch, and I'm not kidding. But she was every bit an actor in that film, and to the point where Alexander and I had a conversation afterwards, and it was a big deal for us to make sure that she had a front end credit on it, because what she did and what she gave back in what she was doing laying there was pretty spectacular, and so honestly, it's like, it's playing tennis. You can only be as good as the people you're working with, and you're working on a really good screenplay with a wonderful director, and she was heartbreaking in that scene. So it was what it is. You try and you hope you can capture something that affects or moves people, But what you're really trying to do is just be true to what's going on in the scene. And boy, she was just great. I mean, I think everybody here, except for the guy that slept with her, worked with her. And
Well, I worked with her. That was so gross. My wife would be so bummed right now.
But she really was. I mean, don't you think she was amazing?
Yeah, I mean, if you were like crying over her or yelling at her and she opened her eyes or asked for a Diet Coke or did like any of that, which I would have done totally.
You sure would have.
I love Diet Coke. But like, it just would take you out of it. I mean, she was absolutely that character. Like,
Yeah.
she made all of us method because
Yeah,
she-
you never
I
talked
would, like,
to her. I mean,
I
really.
just forgot she was a human, and I saw her at craft service once, and I was like, "Oh my God, she's gonna be okay! Like, she's fine. She's better." But
Thank you, God.
not so much.
At the end of Michael Clayton, the camera lingers on a character for an extended period of time, leaving the audience to kind of wonder, after all that he's been through, what is going to come next. And at the end of this film, there's a similar long hold take of three characters sitting on a couch, and people who the audience has felt become very emotionally invested in and curious about, and then it cuts to black. And so I think the question, I mean, Alexander may have his own answer. I wonder what for each of you guys, particularly Shailene and George, as the people who are here that were involved in that particular scene, what do you imagine becomes of that family after the credits roll?
Shay, what do you think?
Well, I think it symbolizes that life goes on, and that no matter what you go through or what occurs, life is always moving, and I think that they probably struggled a lot afterwards, but I think it just acted as a symbol to show the fact that you can't wallow in something, you have to move forward.
Yeah, it's funny. In a way, it wasn't three people; it was four. That blanket that she was laying in was there, and in a way, I always had the sense that they're going to be okay. It's a funny thing. It's a film trick that you could, if you started the movie with that shot, everybody would get up and walk out. Same thing in Michael Clayton. I remember when we were shooting Michael Clayton, that last scene, we were stealing that location in New York, and I'm sitting in the back of the car, and we're just driving through the streets of Manhattan, and people, when they see the movie, they'd be like, well, what was going through your head, and what were you trying to do? And all I was trying to do was not laugh, because people are driving by in cars going, hey, George Clooney! Hey! Over here! Look at over here! Hey, you look old! Hey! I hated you on Roseanne. Fuck you, George Clooney! And it went on forever, and you're just like... And people were really offended at the fact that I wasn't, playing the whole last film through my head, and I was really just trying to not laugh. And we didn't know that they were going to be playing, Morgan Freeman, March of the Penguins on. Fuck no, and he could have really screwed with us, I suppose. Right, yeah. But there, again, it was that sort of same feeling of this. Truly is a storyteller's film, and when you work with a storyteller, and he at the end just says, "I'm going to leave an audience, you guys tonight, sitting in a room with these three characters." And let you all make up your own minds how this is going to play out from here on out. I love that. I think that that's a grown-up filmmaker trusting an audience to write the next scene.
What we're going to do is take a few questions from the audience, and because we're recording today, I'm going to repeat your question just in case, also so people in the back can hear. So if you just put your hands up, we'll have time for a few of these right here at the end. So
the question was no, I was going to say something terrible about Matthew Lillard, but I won't.
Why is it always bad?
No, it was mean. You're asking about whether or not, because I've directed, I would step out and look at things. Honestly, when you're working with a really good director, you're just so relieved to be working with someone who shoots with a point of view and has an idea of what it is they want to do, that there isn't even a moment that you sit back and go, well, if it were me doing this, because he's a director that I would be, if I'm doing anything, I'm just trying to steal ideas from him that I will use later, which I do. I steal like a madman, you know. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's good. But so no, you know, there have been times on films, even before I was directing, where you'd look at it and go, I think there's probably a better way to do this on certain films, but certainly not with him ever. You know, not with the good filmmakers. You never do. Thanks.
Yes, yes.
My question is for Mr. Clooney. First of all, thank you for the great characterization. And I also think you're a great actor too. But
All right, God damn it. Here.
Yeah.
the character of Matt King is very vulnerable and naive compared to most of the characters you portrayed in the past. What was it that appealed to you about that character when you read the script for the very first time that made you decide to take the part?
Rarely have you played a character that vulnerable or naive in a sense. What appealed to you about that?
I just like, I'm 50, you know. I can't play the parts that I used to play over time. And as an actor, if you follow the actors that you loved who handled aging well on screen, it's not for the faint of heart, you know, aging on screen. People, you know, watch you and then they'll be like, wow, yeah, you know, that's so, you know, look so young up close, or, you know, there's a million things that happen. It really requires you to accept change and to accept the direction that the things that become available to you, or the things that you sort of fold naturally into. My career has sort of evolved over the years into characters that a lot of times seem to have their act together and found out later that they didn't, like in Up in the Air or in Michael Clayton. And this seemed to be kind of a natural progression, which is a guy that actually doesn't have anything together, you know, loses arguments to 8-year-olds. And I could understand him now a lot more than I could have years ago, obviously, because I'm figuring these things out in life as I go along the way. So for me, it was just simply, it was the right part at the right time, and certainly the right director to trust. You know, I wouldn't put on flip-flops and start running like a goose for anybody, you know, honestly, because you're never sure whether that's going to work or not, and you don't trust your own instincts necessarily. So you have to hope that you're in good hands. So it's really, honestly, if someone creates a really nice environment for you like that, then a screenplay like that was an easy choice for me to make. It was the shirt and the pants that really threw me.
I want to go to the back of the room a little bit. Yes, yes. Thank you.
George, well,
Uh-oh.
It sounds like a lot of things were working in your favor along with everyone else. What was, other than the shirts and sandals, what was the most challenging thing?
I guess we could ask everyone, what was the challenge? What was challenging? What did you guys find challenging? Was there stuff in it that, I know for me, just the first day of shooting, which is always tricky anyway, because it usually takes you about a week to figure out what you're doing, you know. First day, we had to shoot the scene where I confront our two best friends. I run to their home and I confront them. It's a tough scene to do day one. And so I was concerned of what the level was. You know, you're never quite sure how high or low it's supposed to be. And I think Alexander wasn't quite sure yet either. So there were challenges in figuring out, because it's a really fine line of funny and not, you know, and so we were trying to figure out where that was. So that was a challenge. What were challenges for you guys?
Well, I will say that it's not every day that something comes across your desk that's disqualified, that has one of the great actors. And I'm not looking for money, literally. But
I'm out.
But no. But like, you have an actor that, as you read the script, you realize this is a moment, this is a part, this is a director. These are the words that equal something amazing. And to be a part of that and to show up on day one or whenever we worked and to understand that you're in a game that's at the highest level. I feel coming in, you acknowledge and understand that you're a part of something special and you're part of a film that has the potential to last the test of time, to prove itself worthy over time. And to be an actor or to be an artist and have that opportunity in whatever level your career is at, to come into that game and have your game ready to roll, I mean, that's a challenge that you're excited about, but that's a real experience that you're like.
Well, also you have to hit the ground running. You don't get to do I'm walking into the house scene first. It was really sort of right off the bat, right, for you guys too? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was challenging for me to not know anything in those beginning scenes. To just like play. I mean, I was super nervous around Alexander all the time. I still kind of am. Part of me is glad he's not here because he still makes me nervous because I want him to like me. But yeah, like you're working, stealing your words, like you just don't want to suck. Like you don't want to be the sucky part of an Alexander Payne movie.
Everybody I know assumes when they ask Shailene about this that the underwater stuff has got to be, not fun, challenging, brutal. You've actually said it was pretty cathartic, wasn't it?
Yeah, I loved filming that scene. We only took 4 takes, so it was really quick. Alexander was inside filming a different scene with you, I believe, and would pop out in between takes to see what we were doing in the pool. And it was fun. I just got to go underwater and cry and release it. I thought
She cries
it was
underwater. She's 18 when she did it, something like that.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yes, sir. Yep. Yes.
I've spent some time in Hawaii, and I find that there's something so magical about it that it often makes me tear up spontaneously when I hear Hawaiian music or I'm just there. I wonder if there's anything that any of you want to share that touches you deeply about the islands.
Go. Someone else talk.
Just another beautiful place.
It is a pretty beautiful place.
And that's really the thing about it is the culture of the islands and the beauty of the islands. They both reflect each other, and it's such an amazing place because it's one of the technical most remote places in the world, and so they've really got this whole island culture that's almost like a completely separate country from the mainland. And everything about it, it's just absolutely beautiful. You get in from the airport and you're driving to your hotel and you see the side of mountains that look like they're made of diamonds because of the dew on the grass, and you go to black sand beaches where the waves are 9 feet tall, and you go, you see the north shore of Kauai, which has these huge cliffs where you see salt lines from waves that were 65 feet tall. And just all of these amazing things all next to each other. It's an oasis. The entire place, every island is an oasis, and that's one of the things that really sticks with you, and it stuck with me coming out of Central Texas where I was from and just being landed on the literal other side of the world, and to jump into that abyss and discover that it was a feather bed. It was amazing.
I love that. Did you hear that? Oh, wow. He's so smart.
I was going to say the same thing. Featherbed. Fucker.
Yes, sir. Yes.
When they showed the clips to your George, the worst TV series you were ever in, Sunset Beach.
Yeah.
Showed the scene where you said the word amphetamine. You asked them to reverse it so they show my face.
Were you in it? Oh.
It's very upsetting that they never show my face.
You know what? I will talk to them about that.
I just have to say, the second time I saw the film, and I just was, and I read part of The Shrink, and I know John Jackson because I did play with him when I was a kid.
Oh.
And it was such a wonderful film. It moved me so. And if anybody has a parent that which I do, that's ill or something, or the work was so amazing from all of you. I just was so moved. This is the second time I've seen it. I don't go to see movies usually twice this much, and I just so loved it. And hello, Judy.
Hi, Jason.
Okay, we'll go to the, yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Jason. She was asking what was different from the script I read to what I saw on screen. There's a touch that Alexander has that, and you've seen it in his work in almost every film he's done. He's done 5 films. They're all wonderful. There is this incredible patience that he has. Patience. The sort of moments in the interstitial scenes in between with the music playing and just moments of catching up, which really capture what you were talking about when you were talking about Hawaii and the sort of the sense of time is a very different pace there. It's sort of like being in a feather bed. And the diamond sparkly dew and all this shit. Okay. But there really is a sense of confidence in the filmmaking, you know, that you see, that you can read in the script, but you can't really understand it until you see it. And the ability he has to turn on a dime from funny to sad. It's a really tricky thing to do, especially when you do fairly broad comedy, you know. There's shots of, you know, I'm popping my head out of a bush and things that are really feel like almost Coen brother-esque, sort of big. And then to be able to flip it around and have, you know, Amara being told her mother's dying and her turning around and looking at her sister, and, you know, those moments that sort of catch you in the throat. And they can happen in, you know, seconds, you know, I'm literally in seconds. So I think that part of it's not something that you could have ever read in the screenplay. You just see it happen as he takes a long time in post-production because he really does think these things through as he goes. You know, so I think that was it mostly.
I think we have time for 3 more, if that's all right with you guys. So
I say 3.5.
3.5. All right. I want to go to the back. It's hard to see with the lights, but there is somebody over there. Well,
No,
okay.
he's
This
leaving.
lady's
It's
been
okay.
really wagging her hand, so we're gonna take care of that, and then we'll move back.
You say you just love George Clooney? Yeah. Does
Never
everyone
heard-
love
Okay,
George
that's
Clooney
fine.
or what?
That's $20. That's cash right there.
You do? I will hug you.
Give her the 20.
I do have a serious question. I was just wondering what's more interesting, working with very famous actors and actors, or a little bit more unfamous, or however you say it.
What do you think?
Famous. No,
Okay.
I'm kidding. You asked if it was more interesting to work with famous actors or less famous actors, right? I feel like it's most interesting to work with good actors. I mean, thanks, guys.
That landed like a feather bed.
Right.
Like dew on the side of.
Okay.
But I mean, also it's an interesting thing because the idea of good actors is also a tricky thing because you can really be bad in something because of the screenplay or because of the direction or because there's a lot of things that can help an actor be good too. So there's all these elements that play into working with good actors, including working with really good directors, and you know there's all of these other elements. So I don't know, working with it's fun working with you know, actors. That's a fun gig. You know, actors are fun. You know, in general, there's a couple that are schmucks, and you know who you are.
Okay, there's a person here in the middle. Yeah. Yeah. Dude, you were hit by Robert Forster and survived. What was that like for you?
Dude, it was intense. No, that was a really fun day on set. You know, I got there that morning and there was this guy that kind of didn't fit in. I hadn't seen him around before. He was 7 feet tall, dressed in red. And I go up and I say, "Hey, man, who are you?" And he's like, "I'm here to teach you how to get punched in the face." I'm like, I could have sworn you were older. No, but it's you know, it was such a fun day on set, getting to do that, you know, learning the art of knocking your head back just the right way and landing on a piano without breaking yourself, you know. It was a lot of fun, and Robert Forster, you know, outside of his character, is the coolest guy in the world, and to get to work with him was also really cool. You know, the whole experience on set was an amazing learning experience, and so it was just one of those especially awesome days to be there.
Our last question is going to come from
Oh,
the person
it
in
better
the
be a good one
back.
then.
Yes, yes.
My question is for Shailene. I just wanted to ask, like, coming from television and going into doing your first big film, how was that transition for you? Like, what was the most challenging thing for you, and what was the most exhilarating thing for you, as far as the experience, having a great cast and great screenplay, project, etc.?
The question was the transition for me from going from television to this film. You know, it was exciting. I kind of say it's like going from middle school to high school in a sense. The transition didn't really, I didn't see it as a transition. I didn't see it as me moving into a different. What was that face?
She just said, you know, you're middle school to high school, and I just was like, it's like going from the bathroom to the rest home for me. But go ahead.
No, it's so funny. Anyways, I didn't really see it as any kind of transition. I just saw it as a really exciting opportunity. I love film. I love the fact that you can kind of dive into something so deeply for a few months and then remove yourself from it and live a different part of your life. And being on a television show, you have a certain amount of scenes to do every day. You have like 7 to 10 scenes to do in a day, and you have to do them in a certain amount of hours. And you know how all the other actors work because we just finished our 4th season. So we know kind of what the day is going to hold before we get there. And then being able to work on this film, it was sort of like being on a playground. You never knew what you were able to do the next day, if you were going to try the swings or get on the slide. And working with actors I hadn't worked with before was really exciting, especially these actors. I'm just so inspired by all of them still today on a daily basis. But yeah, it didn't
Did
really
any of the
seem-
actors treat you differently when you went back to the show?
No, everybody was very nice.
Did you treat them differently?
Yes? No. No.
I just want to note the fact that tonight is the last time that this group will be together for a Q&A, probably ever. Maybe not. Well, till the 10th reunion, 20th reunion, who knows, when the re-release.
Sequel. Brian Spears' Revenge.
Right. But in all seriousness, the movie premiered at the Telluride Film Festival in the beginning of September. It's been a long run to this point. There's a few more weeks to go. But contrary to appearances, it's not all fun and games. And I was there at that first Telluride screening. I know it's a long slog, and I've seen these guys and everybody else make that trip this year. And it's really, I just think you should be commended for the classy way that you guys throughout the entire process have conducted yourselves. It's not everyone can say the same, and it's been very fun to watch. So congratulations to you guys, and enjoy the 26th.
So nice.
Thanks. Thank you.